everyone, I'm Teacher BoQian from Kangaroo Study and welcome back to our YouTube channel again. Now, in this video, we're going to discuss how our current primary 4 students, they can prepare for the NMOS that's coming next year. So, before we actually get started, let me introduce myself. So, at the age of 16, that's when I first came to Singapore. So, I get a full scholarship from NMOS to study at Raffles Institution. So after that, I continued my study at National University of Singapore, and after graduating from NUS, I decided to become a Math Olympiad trainer. So this is the 7th year I've been teaching primary school Math Olympiad, and my special expertise is in the local competitions such as the NMOS, AP and RMO. So here are some of the achievements from my past students. As you can see, many of them has gotten good results in the local competitions here. So enough about me, let's talk about the overview of today's video here. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the importance and the key information on NMOS. And after that, we are going to talk about the roadmap of the NMOS next year. At different time stage, what are the things that we can do? Then after that, I'm going to talk about how you can assess your current level and choose the right approach here. Then of course, in order to prepare for these competitions, the most important thing is doing the practice. So here I'm going to introduce to you 4 effective principles that you can use to prepare for the competition more effectively. So without further ado, let's get started. So about the importance and key information of NMOS here, as we all know, NMOS is organized by NUS High School, which can be one of the dream schools for many students if they are really interested in math and science. So about this competition, it is only available to the students that are currently in primary 5. So for our current students who are in primary 4, this will be happening next year in July. And this competition, you can only register through your respective primary school. And the mode of this competition is an offline written test, where it is going to be organized at your respective primary school as well. So let's look at some of the key dates from the NMOS this year, so we can use this as a good reference for the NMOS next year. So as you can see from here, this year the registration period is from 20th of February to 20th of March. So they give you 1 month time to register for the competition. So what's going to happen is your school is going to send out the notice either from the parent gateway, or some school they actually send out a physical letter. Then you then indicate your interest on whether you want to participate in this competition from there. So after the registration, the actual competition is happening at 14th of July. So it's the middle of July. Most likely this is happening in July next year as well. Then after that, they will get the results in early August. They are going to tell you what medal you have gotten and whether you are selected for the national team here. So about the actual format of this test, is 1 hour 30 minutes, which consists of 35 questions here. As you can see, the questions are divided into different categories. So there are 1 mark question, 2 mark question, 3 mark question, as well as 4 mark questions. Of course, the level in difficulty increases from there. So altogether, this paper will be 35 questions with a total of 80 marks. Now, let's talk about some of the awards you can get from this competition itself. So as you can see here, the top 1.5% students, they are going to get the gold medal. And every year, there is about 50 students here. And then the next 7%, they will get a silver medal, which is around 200 students. Lastly, 11.5% of the students, they are going to get a bronze medal. This is about 350 students here. So of course, there are some of the special rewards as well. So for every school, there will be a top performing gold award. So this is to encourage the girls to participate in these Math Olympiad competitions as well. So this will be the girl who scored the highest mark and from every respective school. Then after that, there is the top 20. So these students, they will be invited to join the national training team. And from there, they are going to have 2 training sessions. Then they're going to decide who can represent Singapore in the international competitions, which is what we call the International Mathematical Science Olympiad here. So the top 12 students from this selection test, they actually get to represent Singapore in the competitions here. Then let's talk about the relevance of NMOS to the DSA, which is something that many of the parents are really interested in. So for the NUS High DSA, every year we have about 170 to 180 students who can get into the school through the DSA here. And from what we have observed in the past year, now those who have gotten good results in NMOS, they have a much higher chance in order to get in through the DSA. Of course, when you do the DSA, it also depends on your actual performance there. There will be an actual written selection test, which is testing students on math and science. Then once the student has passed the selection test, then they will go for a selection training camp. During the training camp, they are going to do some science practicals as well as some math experiments to see, to observe, for the teachers to observe how the students react to these challenges and whether they have this passion for the subjects here. So here, now let's also talk about what have been tested in NMOS. So from the year 2024 to 2025, as you can see, we have divided the knowledge that are being tested into these 7 key points here, which is the calculation, counting, word problem, geometry, number theory, travel problem, as well as the comprehensive problems. So here we have a total of 35 problems, and we have divided them into these categories. As you can see, the percentage indicate how likely these questions are likely to be tested here. Now, in order to see this data more clearly, let's put everything into a pie chart. So from this pie chart, we can see out of the 7 learning modules, which one is tested most. We're going to see that this will be the word problems here. Then after that, the second mostly tested, this will be the geometry, which is about 20%. So these 2 modules alone is already about half of the entire paper here. That tells us how important these topics are. So now we have a better understanding of the NMOS competition. Now let's talk about the roadmap to the NMOS 2027, which is happening next year. So I'm going to divide this into 3 stages here. So at the first stage, of course, in order to go for the competition, we have to have a very good understanding of the topics that are being tested. So we need to build a strong foundation on these math topics. Then after that, we have to strengthen our understanding and advance from there. This means that after we have learned about the basic knowledge, then we have to go one step further to study those more complicated topics. Then once we have finished learning all these topics, that's the time for us to do the revision and the final sprint for the actual test. So here, according to the timestamp, I'm going to divide it into the 3 stages. From now until the end of this year is the good time for us to build a strong foundation. Then from January next year until May next year, then we can start to advance to the more difficult topics to see how they can put different knowledge points together into one single question. Then after that, during the June and July period, that's where we're going to have the final sprint. So we are going to have an overall revision of the things we have learned, and then students, they can also start preparing for the competition itself, which means that they can start doing the past year NMOS papers here. So in order to build a strong foundation, which is what we have to do currently, now let's see what are the topics that we have to learn. So as you can see here, these are the topics that are being tested in NMOS in the past. And under the 7 different learning modules, we can see actually there's quite a lot of topics here. Now, for those that are highlighted in the yellow color, these are more basic topics. So this is the things that students they should learn this year to make sure we master these topics here. Then from the next year onwards, you can see those topics that are highlighted in blue. These are the more advanced topics. That's where students can pay more attention and emphasis in when they go to next year. Right, so now we're clear about the overall things that we have to do in every different stage. Then let's talk about how we can assess our current level and choose the right approach here. So for students, every student they have a different starting point. So we cannot use the same approach for all the students here. It won't be as effective Let's say for one student, this is very effective approach, but it might not be the same case for another student here. So every student, right, they differ in the following ways. First of all, students, they may have a different knowledge base here. Right? Some students, they have learned about a lot about the Olympiad topics that are being tested, but some students, they are just starting to learn about these topics. Then the second thing is the ability to apply this method independently. So some students, once they have learned these topics, right, they are able to adapt to these new methods and apply to them quickly. Where some of the students, they may need a little more help in order to apply this method successfully. Then, of course, this also depends on students' calculation accuracy as well as their problem-solving habits. So, once we understand these things, it doesn't mean that we can score well in the test. Of course, we have to have good reading habits, good working habits, in order to make sure that the question we know how to solve, we can actually get them correct. And lastly, it will be depend on the student's readiness for the NMOS level questions. Right? So the things that we are practicing when we are learning these knowledge points, it won't be as difficult as the things that actually come out in the NMOS competitions. So students, they differ in these aspects. Of course, assessing their current level is very important. Now, how we can assess the student current level is that you can contact me to arrange an in-person assessment at our center. So from there, we can see your child's current level and then we can determine the right starting point for them. So of course, this in-person assessment will be free. And after that session, we also have an explanation session as well to talk about how to solve these questions here. So for those students who already have a very good, who didn't really get a very good foundation, who are just beginning to prepare for the NMOS. So this is something they can do here, right? They can make use of this book, which is prepared for our teachers at our center. So this is called From GEP to Math Olympiad 2024 P4 Must-Have Book. So just now we talked about the 7 learning modules. As you can see from the table of contents here, they are actually divided into these 7 modules. And out of every module, I've selected the 3 of the most tested topics here. So these are the topics that are suitable for the students who are just beginning to learn. The topics are not very difficult, and then some of them, they're actually quite interesting as well. So for under each of the topics, now what you're going to see is that there will be an introduction on the knowledge module first. Then after that, under each topic, there will be knowledge introduction as well as the example analysis here. Right? We're going to have detailed solutions as well as summary points for different type of questions. So once we understand this, what we can do is we can start doing the practice as a back. And once you are done with this exercise, then you can check with our teachers about whether you got this question correct. So you can see there's a QR code here for some of the more difficult questions. We recorded videos, so you can scan the QR code to view the YouTube video we have prepared for the students. Right? So the approach to do this book is that we should understand this work example first, and then we start doing the practice at the back. Now, of course, some students, they already have a very strong foundation, then they can start doing this book, which is also prepared for our teachers. So in this book, which is what is a P4 NMOS all-in-one practice book. So within this book, it's no longer just a practice question. These are the actual questions that came out in NMOS before. So from the last 5 years NMOS test papers, we've organized them into these different seven different modules here. As you can see, under each module, we also divide them under the different topics. So students, they can start to work on the topics that they have learned, and this is the part they are already familiar with, to see what are the different type of questions that's going to come out in the actual competition. So as you can see, this is what you're going to see within the book. So under each topic, you're going to see the past year questions. We've labeled them, which year the question came out, whether it's from round 1 or round 2 of the competition as well. So students, they can attempt these questions. Not once they are done, of course, they can talk to our teacher as well, right? We can discuss about these solutions here. And for some of the more difficult questions, actually we recorded a videos for them as well. So you can scan this QR code to view the full list. Of course, more questions and more videos where it's going to be added into this list in the future as well. So from there, right, when you go to our YouTube channel, right, you can just search NMOS, then the year number, round 1 or round 2, and which question it is. If we have recorded that video, then you are going to find it there. So this is about how we can use the two books effectively. Now, let's talk about the 4 principles for effective practice here. So first of all, right, when doing these practice questions, one of the most important things we have to do is that when we do not understand what the question is about, right, when we cannot solve a question, we gotta ask the teacher. So as you can see from here, here are some of the students asking teacher questions. Now, as you can see from the first example here, hi, teacher BoQian, I understand the blue part is equivalent to n times n plus 1. But may I know what is the last column? Why this part equal to the red rectangle part? Then from the other student, hi teacher, these 3 sides are equal to each other, but how do we prove? Triangle CDG, this is congruent to the triangle B'GE. We are still missing one condition here. So you can see that these students, right, when they are asking questions, they are not just simply asking a question. Hi teacher, I got this question, I do not know how to solve. Please help me explain. Right? That's not a very effective approach. Now, the reason is because if you're just simply asking the question, right, when you cannot solve the question, you didn't actually think the question through. So this way, even if the teacher has helped you explain this question, right, it won't stay in your memory for a very long period of time. Then after that, maybe after a few days, then you're going to forget how to solve these questions again. Right, so that's where we say that when you ask the questions, right, you're gonna ask with these different skills here. So first of all, right, we have to tell the teacher how we have attempted these questions here. What's our attempt and what have we gotten from these steps here? Now, of course, I also had to explain which is part that we got stuck. Now, for example, just now the student tell me, hey, we are still missing one condition to prove the congruence of triangle here. So we gotta explain this part, then we actually know, hey, we have actually think through the questions. We have tried our best. So at the part where you got stuck is where the teacher can pay more attention to. So after the explanation, you are going to gain the most from there as well. So of course, we have to ask a specific question about which part of the question that we need more focus to explain. So that's about how we can ask questions more effectively. Then the second thing is that when we are doing this question, sometimes we make mistakes. So that's where we can keep this good habit of a correction book here. So as you can see, this correction book is also prepared by our center. And within this book, you're going to see there are 4 sections here. So for the first step is where student paste the question that they answer wrongly into the book. So they can cut it from their paper or they can just simply write down the question by themselves. Then after that, the next thing they can do is redo these questions without referring to the answer key or the solution that they have gotten before. And then in step 3 is where they can summarize on the key learning points as well as reflect on their mistakes. What went wrong the first time? Is it a completion mistake or misunderstanding of the concept here? Then lastly, for step 4 is where students can recall the date where they have to redo independently on these questions one more time. So let's see about this year. You can see there are some examples of our students' correction book, which they have followed these 4 steps very clearly. And of course, only doing this correction book itself is not enough. Sometimes, even if we record it into the book, if we do not look at it again, we are going to forget about how to solve the question after a period of time. So as you can see in this curve of forgetting, right, after the first hour, we're going to forget about more than 50% of the things we have learned. Then after one day, only 20% of the things we have learned were written. And then you see after 1 month, it's just roughly about 10% if we never revise on these things that we have learned. So of course, revision is a very good habit. Then for these questions, we have to review them from time to time. So let's talk about the key time where we can review on this question again. So at the beginning, we made a mistake. We put this question into our question book when we go back home. So this time we redo without looking at the answer key here. Then according to the forgetting curve, the next time we can redo is 1 day later. On the second day, this time we redo and reflect on the mistakes that we have made. Then after that, 1 week later, we can redo the question one more time. So this time round, one more thing we can do is we can also solve some similar questions on the same topic as well to strengthen our understanding here. Then last time we have to redo is 1 month later. This is where we redo and summarize on the key points from all these similar questions here. Right, so the key thing for us is redo this question regularly so we get a better understanding and good impression of all these topics that are being tested here. And of course, the last principle, it will be to strengthen this understanding. Another thing we can do is we can also teach this question to another person. Right? So that's what we ask our students to do, is to let them record videos on teaching this question as well. Right? So we explain this question to another person. That's where we can actually deepen our understanding. Because let's think about this. Knowing how to solve and knowing how to explain, these are two very different understanding levels here. Right? When you know how to explain, this means you know the link and the logic from every step, from step 1 to step 2, step 2 to step 3. How you can link them together, that's where you actually think it through using your logic here. So as you can see here, right, our students, not only they have explained this question to their parents, they also recorded down these videos. So they themselves, they can also view these videos from time to time to see their progression from there. Right, so to summarize on these 4 approaches here, first thing is we gotta ask the question promptly. Whenever we are not sure, we gotta ask the questions and make sure we ask the question effectively with the specific questions here. The second thing we can do is for those questions we answer wrong, we can organize them into the question book. Of course, only using the question book itself is not enough. We still have to review on them from time to time. And lastly, in order to deepen our understanding, we can also explain these questions to another parent. Right, so these are the 4 principles for the effective practice here. So of course, if you want to know more about our training program, you can also contact me through WeChat or WhatsApp. And if you want to know more about the events that are happening in our center, you can join our P4 Math study group. From there, we are going to post from time to time about the new events that's happening in our center. So until the next time, bye bye.